Hi everyone, welcome to the Arseholics podcast on Sunday night. Recording after what feels like a rarity. It's a day that Arsenal did not win. It's me, Raj, here, and you've got Mize and you've got Aaron with me. Hello, boys.
Evening,
Good
mate.
evening.
Oh, it's somber, isn't it? Look at that. Just even in the good evening, you can tell the feeling. It's weird, isn't it? There's a certain bit of me. Look, obviously, I want us to win all the time. Yeah, like don't get me wrong. But there was a certain part of me that sort of felt, well, at least it'll be a little bit different today when we're talking about the game, because it has felt right so far. Whenever we do these episodes, it's basically the same stuff, right? When we're because we're playing well, like the same sort of players are playing well. It's the same sort of performances. It's been relatively easy to do. It's kind of fairly samey. That being said, obviously Leeds was a bit of a different type of performance, but today, it's actually a different result. So it's I think this is our first. I think we'd won 8 games in a row, and here's a draw. My, before we get into the specifics of the game, how are you feeling after the result?
I mean, look, going back a week or so, just over a week, when we previewed the Leeds game, and looking ahead to the 3 games that we had: Leeds away, PSV at home, and then Southampton away. Sorry, I said that I thought we'd probably drop points in one of those 2 away games in the league, and I thought it would be Southampton. So not to say that I expected us to not that I expected us to necessarily drop points as such. I just felt like with such a thin squad, we might start to see the signs of that in that second away game. So I'm not, to be honest, that surprised. I am obviously pretty disappointed, of course, because we've been on this fantastic run. We've been winning basically every game, and it is a little bit of a shock to the system in a way, because it kind of resets us a little bit. But in terms of the result today, I think as a result, I'm disappointed, but I think I'm already over it to a certain extent, because I think I can kind of rationalize it. And when you kind of look at the context of kind of what we've done so far this season, and again, possibly some of the reasons as to why we didn't win today, I feel like I say, I've almost accepted the result already. But the disappointing thing for me is really kind of what happened in the second half, and the performance and the drop off in performance compared to the first half, as well as obviously that we didn't take our chances in the first half. And that's probably the most concerning thing, or the most worrying thing. But like I said, I know we're going to unpick it, and there's reasons for why that happened, and we'll talk about those reasons. But I think from a result perspective, like a point away in a game that we lost last season, at a ground that we lost last season, it's not the end of the world. It was really important that we didn't lose today, especially with how that second half was going. And it kind of keeps us ticking over. And I think we now go into a week where, we potentially finish top of our Europa League group if things go well. And then we have probably one of the most ideal home games you could ask for, really, which should hopefully put us back on track. So I'm not feeling too bad, to be honest. I'm not feeling too bad.
Yeah, it's one of those that even if you're putting an actual title challenge together, you're not going to win every game. But I think it is worth contextualizing that when you look at the Twitter and various social media feeds at the moment, everyone's like, "Oh, you got to beat teams like Southampton if you're gonna, compete with Man City." There's none of us that were talking about competing with Man City, before we put this amazing run together. So Aaron, and is it really important to take that into context? The fact that we've just got used to winning all these games. The moment you don't win one, it suddenly feels like it's you're focusing on all the negatives and why this is going to happen more often, and how we can't kind of win games anymore and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. We're Arsenal fans, right? And the minute we've over the last 10 years we've been through some trauma, right? So I think as a fan base we can be quite reactionary, and we kind of want to find reasons and explanations for everything that happens when a result doesn't go our way. And I think you look at the game, you can spin it, I don't say positively, but you can put a positive spin on it, a bit like Myers did, which is we've built a buffer, right, where we can afford to drop a couple of points at a tough game where previously we probably would have lost that game, right? And actually, if you look at the results this weekend, we're not that much worse off than we were if you look at it in terms of the context of a top 4 race, right? But you can spin it pretty negatively as well if you really wanted to say that, look, we are, whether we want to admit it or not, right now in a title race. And there were some worrying signs in that second half, was where when you look at the second half against Leeds and you look at just how we've been playing in the Europa League games as well, the Bodo game and PSV, there's been a drop off, right? And I think you can then ask why, but I think I'm probably in between the two. I think you're going to have drop offs. You're going to have moments where the team just isn't clicking. The team make mistakes. The team are tired. The squad players come in and things go wrong, and that's just a season of Premier League football. So yeah, I think I'm with you, Miles. I think you kind of just, look, we didn't lose. We didn't play amazingly well in the second half, but we take the point and we just move on.
Is the concern, if there is going to be a concern, right? Because I agree with you guys that I think that the result in itself isn't the concern. You're going to drop points at some point this season. I think also one thing that Arsenal showed us towards the second half of last season and so far this season, that you can't always predict the games that you are going to drop points in. They're not always the ones which on paper look to be difficult. I mean, we did not think that we'd get 6 points out of the Tottenham and Liverpool games. And last season, when we went on towards the back end of last season, we didn't think we were going to go away to Chelsea and West Ham and come out with 6 points then. But equally, we didn't think we'd drop some other points. It is hard to predict, therefore, in that way. But Miles, you talked about, I think, paraphrasing you slightly, it's not necessarily the result. It's some of the things that happen behind that result that perhaps give you concerns. And maybe we should, it's a good way for us just to get into some of those things. Was finishing one of those concerns, Miles, because the first half against Southampton today, I was loving what I saw. Particularly, I think the first 30-35 minutes, I thought it was just another great display of an incredibly well-coached, well-drilled side of incredible quality. It felt like Southampton didn't know what time it was sometimes. We were just constantly getting in behind them over and over and over again. But it was always time and time again. The finishing was quite basic. It felt there was just like a lack of real quality to any of it. Do you agree with that, Miles? And does that concern you?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it was, we had a few pretty good chances. A couple of them seemed to fall to Jesus, and it concerns me. It does concern me because you've obviously seen in the last few games, right, that we haven't been as kind of free. Well, I wouldn't even say the last 2 games, Leeds and PSV. We've obviously kind of struggled to win, or maybe not struggled, but we've almost nicked wins, and Leeds was pretty hairy. And there's obviously going to be games where we're going to concede goals, right? We've managed to keep clean sheets in the last couple of games. Again, Leeds probably being the prime example of where we maybe did get a bit lucky. But there's going to be those games where we're not going to be able to keep a clean sheet every game. And really, the way to make sure that doesn't come back to bite you, where you have a poor performance in the second half, or there's a period of the game where we're dominated, is really to get the goals when we're on top. And so, of course, it is a concern. I think, if we're talking specifically about our striker and Gabriel Jesus, I think the thing with Jesus is, right, like, I think we knew that he wasn't the most prolific striker around, and he's going to miss some chances. But I guess, again, kind of contextualizing the whole thing, or contextualizing the season so far, and almost what he's brought to the team and the improvement that he's given us on top of what we had the last season or the last couple of seasons. you kind of have to, again, factor that in as well. So yeah, okay, he missed a couple of chances today, and yeah, that's frustrating and it's annoying. And potentially, if he takes one of those, we go on to win the game and we get the 3 points. But equally, everything else that he's offering this team, and he's brought to this team, and all of the other qualities that he's bringing, you need to factor that in as well. So I wouldn't be going too hard on Jesus. And I guess, like, if you go back to when Aubameyang was our forward, there were and he was going through his gold drought and he was going through his tough period, and yeah, he wasn't performing. But the reason he wasn't performing was because the only thing he really offered the team was goals. So that was a massive problem, because if he's not scoring, you're essentially carrying your biggest player and your striker and your highest earner, and the captain at the time. So with Jesus is very different, because even if he's not scoring goals, and obviously hasn't scored in a few games now, you know that he's still going to be doing everything else off the ball, his hold up play, his link up play, dropping deep, going out wide. He's still involved in the game and he still offers a lot, and he still links up so well with the other forwards. So it's a concern, and like we talked about it before the game as well, right? Because we were talking about FPL, and Aaron, and you mentioned you brought Ødegaard into your team this week, your FPL team, and we were saying about Nero mentioned he needs to improve his finishing, and that was clear in the first half because he missed a pretty decent chance. Like, it wasn't a clear cut chance, but it's one where, again, he should hit the target with that, and that it can be a bit frustrating, because I think when you look at all four, I would probably say all four of our forwards, they could all potentially, you could argue they could all be more clinical. And maybe that comes in time. Maybe it's just a case of Jesus is going through a little bit of a dry spell at the moment. And when he gets his next goal, he then goes on and he scores a bunch of them and he hits a purple patch, who knows? So the main thing is, like, compared to previous seasons and recent times, is we're creating chances. Like, we are still, like you said, Raj, we still played very good football in that first 35 minutes. We still managed to open Southampton up a few times. And we clearly showed that we are the better team going forward. And it's almost just like that final finish, final ball, that being clinical basically is what's missing. But yeah, overall, it's concerning, but it's not a huge concern where I'm comparing it to seasons of the past where we either weren't creating chances or our main striker wasn't scoring at all. And that was a bigger concern for me. So I think overall we'll be okay. But yeah, just frustrating for what happened today, really.
With Jesus, Aaron, and do you think that, similar to kind of what Mize is saying, do we need to treat him like he is a bit like a Robert Firmino type striker, where he offers so much? Like Mize said, it's not like the Aubameyang situation where it's just goals. He offers so much that we just have to accept that he's not going to be a very clinical striker. But his reputation seems to suggest he's not incredibly clinical. But because he gives so much else, we almost can't get on his back for not being a clinical finisher, and just need to sort of respect the fact that he gives us so much more.
Yes and no. I think, look, we briefly discussed this, and I saw some talk about maybe we should start Eddie next game instead of Jesus. And I think that's crazy talk. Just because you're right, because if Eddie was like banging them in the Europa League, and if he'd come on and he'd done well, and I know it's hard as a substitute when you come on and do well, then you think, okay, maybe what Eddie will give us is going to be more than what Jesus gives us. But I don't look. Yeah, Jesus missed some chances today, but I don't think any of them were like criminal. I think a few of them were straight at the keeper. There was one where I think the one where he was in 1-on-1. And he just had to kind of just deal with the defender and get a shot away. That was the one where I felt like, a more comfortable, natural striker, if that's a word, probably deals with that situation a bit better. But I think it's just, you put him in that position 9 times out of 10, he probably gets a shot off. I think it's just variance where he got it wrong, right? So yeah, I think we should still expect him to get goals, right? And if he doesn't score goals, that is a problem, right? Because we got him in, not just because he can, improve our play, which he undoubtedly does, but because he can score goals. And if he's not scoring goals, that's a problem. But I think overall, like if we had created more of those first half chances in the second half, I think he probably scores or someone else scores and we come away with a comfortable victory. I think you do get games where you miss a few chances here and there. This didn't seem to me like, look, you can look at it and say, look, if we're taking those chances, if we'd gotten a penalty in the first half, the game's different. That's true. But for me, the bigger concern is what happened in the second half, not really like how bad our finishing was in the first half. Yeah, it wasn't great, but was it alarming? To me, no. Either way, I wouldn't drop him. I think unless his all-round game massively drops, he does offer way more than just goals.
Who said we should drop him?
No, I think that was just talk. Like, should we play Eddie next week?
Okay.
I think Raj, you might have mentioned in the WhatsApp. I don't think he was like seriously suggesting it, but or maybe it was Nero who suggested like, at this rate, maybe Eddie should get looking. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with that. Does it? But does this actually then kind of, I guess, refocus us onto the debate as to whether we are just short on strikers? Because if you've got a situation where you've got Gabriel Jesus, who's our main man, and I think we all agree he just offers you so much. He's such a huge improvement on what we had last year, and what he brings to the team is just phenomenal. And actually probably despite his finishing today, he probably deserved a lot more out of the game. We can talk about the refereeing decisions a bit later. But you see, we've kind of got a situation where we've got two strikers. We've got Jesus and we've got Eddie. And Eddie himself has very publicly come out and said in the past that he doesn't. He basically said words to the effect of he doesn't really feel like he can make an impact off the bench. He said words to that effect. He's not exactly said that, but he's effectively said that he's finds it very, very difficult to be the guy who just you bring off the bench and whatever and you expect to make an impact in 10, 15 minutes. He's a sort of guy that you need to just give starts and starts and starts. And in fairness, last season when we gave him starts, we saw the better end of him. But then do we therefore need a striker who is going to be the sort of person that if Gabriel Jesus isn't scoring and if you need a goal, you can find someone who's going to come off the bench to be that person. And if Eddie isn't that person, it feels like we'd struggle. And it felt like that kind of happened today.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Aaron.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, it doesn't have to be a striker, right? It could be a goal scorer somewhere. And I think that's what we're lacking.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think, it doesn't have to necessarily be a striker. When you look at Man City, for example, they're back up to Haaland. If you're looking at specifically a striker, is Alvarez, who's very young, untested, unknown, kind of what he would offer. So City, I know Haaland's going to score kind of 50 goals this season, but previous to that, they were getting goals from all around the team. And I think that's obviously the model that we should try to follow, because it's just going to help us when the striker's not in a good spell or not scoring goals. But I mean, it's hard though, isn't it? Because if Eddie isn't really that player, that's his role in the squad, isn't it? Like I know what he's saying, and I guess you would say that publicly to kind of almost try and put yourself in the frame for small starts and to basically say, look, I'm not happy being a bit part player. Fair enough, but realistically, that is what he's going to be. And I think with Eddie, like, it must be quite difficult as well. It must be difficult. Like, I kind of agree with him, right? Because like he's been brought on today, for example, with I don't know how long, 20 minutes to go or something, and we weren't playing very well. We weren't controlling the ball. We were losing the ball every time we had it. We were kind of, everything was a bit of a mess in that second half, and you can't really throw on Eddie Nketiah and expect things to massively change. And I agree with Aaron, right? We're probably missing Smith Rowe quite a bit at the moment, when you think he was the kind of alternative to Martinelli. I know he's a very different player, but he's the alternative to Martinelli when we need to change it up on that left-hand side. And he brought us kind of 10 or 15 goals last season as well. And maybe that, that in the second half of the season could be a really big boost, having Smith Rowe back as well. But I mean, like, I don't know, if you think about second strikers or alternative forward options, it's quite hard to, I don't know, like, who could you name anyone that we could sort of think about bringing in that would I mean, I know
It's a
there's
good
like
point,
probably
and it's
loads of
also
players, but yeah,
it's a good point. Also, you know, like kind of going on what you said about City. Actually, if you go through all the teams, particularly like all the top teams, not many really have a second striker who you'd say, you know, is a real goal scorer per se. If you go through all of them, I mean, go through all these top sides that don't really have one. So maybe, you know, there is more of a there's maybe a bit of a supply issue there. And, you know, in theory, you know, any really, really good finisher is probably going to be starting somewhere and not going to be kind of a bench player. The thing that sort of just to get to Eddie, but the thing that frustrates me a little bit with him when he, you know, in this sub role was I remember a while ago reading an interview with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and I think this was still I think this was still when he was manager at Man United, and I think they were talking to him about his reputation as, you know, that kind of you know, super sub and stuff, and it was really interesting what he said, because he said that, you know, he always felt that when he was on the bench, he was spending a lot of the game watching and really looking at the defenders and really, really thinking, you know, that defender's not doing this very well, or that defender is kind of like weak on this foot, or that defender is kind of, you know, today he's just kind of taking a few steps this way, a few steps that way. And then he always felt, therefore, when he was coming onto the pitch, he had a very specific plan of what he was going to do, because he had kind of already analyzed this off the pitch. And I always thought that was a really interesting thing to say, and very logical, and very kind of I imagine very valuable thing to do, because when you are playing in the heat of the game, you can't always analyze that stuff, right? Because you're there, you're playing, you're involved in the game. But from the side, you're observing, you're able to see all these things in the same way that a manager is able to see it and make certain changes. And so therefore, when you come on, you're almost at an advantage to the players that have, you know, been on the pitch already. You almost actually understand what's required in this game a little bit more. When he comes on as a, you know, when we're chasing a goal, I never feel that from him. I always feel like when he comes on, that there's a bit of a headless chicken kind of vibe to him when he's, you know, when he is kind of brought on in those last 15 minutes or so. And yeah, you know, Chan here with the comment on the screen, bringing him on and shoving him out wide certainly didn't help. I mean, that's fair as well. And I guess the problem is, if you're going to keep on Jesus as well, and you know, then unless you go to a 2 striker system, then one of them is going to have to go out wide, I suppose. But at the same time, you know, I think he still had opportunities where he was, you know, even after he came on, that he was operating kind of centrally. I feel like he could do more still to really create impact.
It's so hard to judge him in this game. I think if you said that after watching the 2 or 3 Europa League games, fine, right? But in this game, was Eddie great? No, but no one was great. That's the problem.
But we're not. But my comments on Eddie there aren't necessarily because just of this game. I'm also talking about what we know of Eddie and saw last season as a sub.
Yeah.
He missed a really good chance as well. I thought it was a good chance, the one where it was deflected wide.
He got deflected wide,
but I don't even think it was on. I don't even think he hit it on target. To be fair, I don't know. We don't know because it was deflected, but he didn't really get a good connection. And it's kind of like those moments where, yeah, like a chance like that, he's probably only going to get 1, maybe 2 in such a short space of time as a sub. You're kind of hoping that he just, again, you know, kind of that clinical finishing, or at least hitting the target and making the keeper do something. He wasn't able to do that. So I agree. Like, I mean, yeah, it is tough. It must be, but I still maintain, I think it must be really, really tough to, like, when you say, Raj, when you say he could do more, I guess at the end of the day, as a striker, I mean, I think he does do quite a bit for the team, right? Whenever he plays, he understands the need to press. He's energetic and he's aggressive in the press. So he offers all of that. And I think when you play him through the middle, obviously he's not as good as Jesus in a number of aspects, but he offers a lot of similar traits, right? Which is what we've been saying all season. He offers a lot of similar traits. I feel like he can slot into that position pretty seamlessly and offer, like, you know, like a lot of what Jesus offers, link up play as well. But I mean, I'm just interested to kind of explore when you say he could do more in 10, 20, 30 minutes as a sub. What do you reckon that could be?
Well, I think, to be honest, if you look at who we can bring off the bench to actually positively impact game. Really, he's almost one of 3 players, and today those 3 players almost came on, right? Tierney and Vieira and him, and outside of those 3, they're basically, and obviously Smith Rowe's injured. And so for all of them, in all instances, I guess what I'm looking for them to do is when they're coming on to give something to our attacking output more so than we had prior to them coming on, right? So it's either an injection, either it's basically doing exactly what we're doing, but with more energy, because someone's fatigued and effectively you're coming in and you're just replacing them energy wise, or it is basically to add a dimension. Yeah, you're coming in and adding a dimension that wasn't there necessarily, and then a moment of quality and in a moment where you're really exerting the skills that you have. And with Eddie, I feel that ultimately is finishing. He's a finisher. Yes, he's a fantastically good pressing forward, like in terms of he's got lots of energies. You're right. That's not an issue. It's not an issue for me that he came on and was lazy. That didn't happen. He was putting himself about and doing positive things for the team in that respect. But I suppose for him, therefore, I'm looking for him to create goal scoring opportunities for himself, to put himself in really good positions, to get to take a half chance, to do something in the box.
I just don't think that's his game. I think.
But how can you say that's not his game though? If he's a striker,
So I think Eddie's the type of striker where if we're playing well and we're creating chances, he will do well, right? But when we're playing badly, and I hope he changes, but so far he hasn't shown that he's the type of player he can win you the game by himself. Like where he does something completely out of the blue, and he's done it a few games last season, but it's very rare that he's not that moment of magic player. That and this is what concerns me, which is when we're bringing on someone like him, when we're not playing well, it's very rare that we're going to get a positive outcome just by bringing him on. What you need to do is change the team to structurally create chances, and at that point we can do better. But it's kind of hard, man. Like I don't know, we've got no one else, and this is the point. Like if you just assume Eddie's not going to do it, right, and Eddie's not the guy, there's no one else. Like who else can you bring on? You can bring on Marquinhos, but that's literally about it. You can bring on Reece Nelson. So yeah, Eddie's like literally the best and all we've got.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a case where maybe, I don't know, in hindsight, Arteta might look at it and kind of go, okay, well, should I have pushed Jesus out wide and then, had Eddie centrally, maybe that could have been something. And maybe he thought with the combination of Vieira coming on, maybe he thought Vieira was going to do more, because he was also someone, Vieira, when he came on and Odegaard went off, it felt like there was a massive drop off, wasn't there, Mize? I mean, yeah. I was really surprised because, we were really patient with Vieira because he didn't have a pre-season at all because of injury. And, when he has come on, actually, overall, I think we've been pretty impressed. He had the start against Brentford where he was, brilliant, scored a worldie, and has had some really good moments.
Yeah.
But he was really poor today, wasn't he?
He was. It wasn't just him, though. I mean, look, if we're talking about Vieira, it was I don't know. I can't explain. When you say the drop off compared to what Odegaard was offering or generally does, it was just weird because it wasn't even like it was just really weird stuff that everyone seemed to start doing, which was just real sloppiness, basically, in possession and doing really silly things like holding onto the ball for way too long in midfield or all over the pitch, really, and then just getting pounced on by 2 Southampton players and them breaking. But yeah, he wasn't really at it. And maybe it was just one of those sub appearances, one of those games where like the whole team weren't really at it in that second half. And it's really hard to understand why without kind of maybe being in the dressing room or knowing what's happened this week in terms of fitness and stuff. I mean, my take on it just from the outside is I attribute most of it down to fatigue, to be honest. Like it's been a tough week in terms of I know everyone played midweek, all the Premier League teams played midweek except for City. And so it's not like I'm not saying it's an excuse where, we were tired and therefore it a poor second half performance from these guys and from the team that started and the subs, like the entire 14, 15 players, however many it was that played today, is acceptable. But at the same time, I think, I don't know, maybe it's just one of those where that kind of performance has been coming a little bit. And like I was saying this to you guys after the game, I feel like in hindsight, should Arteta have rotated a bit more for the PSV game when you think that we already had 3 wins in the bank, 3 out of 3 in the bank in the Europa League? It's a game that we had to win. It's a home game that we had to win, and it just sort of takes the pressure off for the last couple of games. We just need a point now on Thursday to finish top. But at the same time, when you know you've got 2 away games in the Premier League back to back, and there's no such thing as an easy game in the Premier League, and especially away, and Ellen Road wasn't easy, and we knew that we generally struggle at Southampton. So kind of off the back of all of what's happened this week in terms of the number of minutes the team have played, did he really need to start Saka? Did he really need to start Jesus against PSV? Tomiyasu, there's a few players there that you could say, okay, the squad options are not great, but what's the priority, or how do I prioritize with a pretty small squad? And you could see like Saka in the second half really dropped off, and I can't really see it being any other reason, because he had, he looked, he's been one of our best players, if not our best player the last few games. He looked lively again in the first half, and then he, along with a few others, dropped off in the second half. So I think Arteta might look at it this week. I know we're going to talk about the PSV return game afterwards, but he might look at fatigue as playing a bit of a factor now in our performances at the moment, and we just kind of have to get through the next couple of games. And I think he might rotate quite heavily on Thursday. But yeah, that was maybe one that we missed a bit of a trick there, where we knew that we had a tough away game today, and he could have maybe rotated a bit more. But again, it's hard because we have a small squad, and this is the problem where we probably do need to address in January, because the options, like Aaron was saying, like even in the front 3 or front 4, there's not a huge amount of options basically, and there's not the reliable kind of players that you can bring in where you know what you're going to get outside of like Marcelo, Jesus, Saka, and Odegaard.
Yeah, and just to add, I think like a game like today is probably not going to help, because what you really need is your substitutes, your squad players to come on and say, I'm worth a run in this squad. And the early start, the kind of first 5 games of the season, Vieira looked pretty good. And Nketiah came on and did some good stuff off the bench, and you're like, all right, these guys can do a job. Right. The problem is when they put in performances like that, and yes, the whole team isn't playing well. I think Arteta probably loses trust and loses faith in them quite well. Like Arteta has his favourites, and he's got, I think he's got an 11, and when he sees that 11 working, he's very reluctant to change it. Right, we saw that with Tomiyasu getting a run at left back. He's like, I'm just going to run with this until it breaks.
Yeah. Sorry, Karen.
I'm just saying, like that. Just like when it comes to the Europa League games, when it comes to like rotating, if he doesn't trust the squad players to say that I can do a job in a lower pressure environment, he's going to put in some of the big guns, and that's a bit of a worry.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic with him not sort of leaning on the squad too much in the Premier League game so far, because I sort of feel like he probably just felt things are going so well, and everyone seemed to be pretty fit, and everyone was sort of staying injury free, touch wood, and the points were just racking up. It feels like, suddenly if you start rotating and suddenly results drop off, you just have so much regret. The reason why. So look, so firstly, just going on to Mize, you sort of your point around whether he should have rotated more against PSV. I think it's one of these things that today, right, we had so many chances in the first half that the game really should have been put to bed. And if we win the game, right, and then we're not talking about whether we rotated enough against PSV. It's one of those things that because we didn't win, we're looking at it and saying it in that way, and partly why we're saying it is because the second half there seemed to be such a big drop off in terms of energy and fitness, and it looked like everyone was fatigued. But this is kind of why I feel like I am focusing a bit on the subs, like on Eddie and Vieira. They, Arsenal are no different to any other team in any other era. The whole point of subs is to change the game, and so often the best teams, they might not be playing very well, and you need a sub, 2 subs to just change it. To sometimes even 1 sub is enough to just make, to kind of add a little bit of energy, to add a little bit of spark, and then suddenly that kickstarts everyone. And I think therefore that's why I'm a little bit I guess annoyed with Eddie and Vieira. And I think Tierney was good, actually. I think Tierney was good when he came on. I'm kind of annoyed at those two because I feel like it's kind of your point, Aaron. It's like, you want your subs to come on and then make a case to start. You want them to come on and be like, well, like, the team genuinely was better when I was playing, so whatever. But it really it felt like they added nothing in that way. And I know it's, again, I think the whole team in the second half was poor, but you can't change the whole team. You can't sub the whole team. You can only make a certain amount of subs anyway. But it felt like we got worse, and I think that's kind of what's bothering me a little bit about it. I agree, Miles. I wonder what he'll do against PSV on Thursday. And maybe we can just naturally get onto that now, like, in the sense that we are in a bit of a weird situation, right, points wise, where although like we've got 12, although we've got 12 points, we've won all our 4 games. If we beat PSV on Thursday, we secure first. If we lose, then we'd still be okay if we win our final game of finishing first, but it just wouldn't be in the bag until then.
I thought we only need a point. Do we not?
A point's enough.
But what I mean is, if we lost, it still wouldn't be a case where we wouldn't be able to finish first. If we lost, then we just we'd need to win in the last, which is why I kind of feel like it might be a case like that. Arteta might do like what you're suggesting and be willing to rest almost the whole team, because he'd be like, well, even if we lost, then there's still a chance if we win at home, which is likely. We're very good at home. But do you see that, Miles? Do you see us effectively doing a full rotation for Thursday?
You probably won't, because again, like what Aaron was saying, I don't think you can do that. I think now that we're 4 games in, and he hasn't, apart from maybe the first game, I can't remember now, but he hasn't really done that where he's gone kind of like 9-10 changes for the Europa League. He's always kept in, a Xhaka or a senior centre back, whatever. And the last game, where he's probably thinking PSV is going to be the toughest team in this group, he's gone for a fairly strong team. So he'll rotate again, of course, but like, are we going to see a front 4 of Marquinhos, Nketiah, Nelson, and Vieira? Probably not. And that is like my worry a little bit, where I would like to see that front 4, because one, it would obviously be new and exciting, and it's, let's see what they can do in a game where, okay, the pressure's not off because we still need a point, or we still need to, get a result. But at the same time, it's not a do or die situation match where everything's riding on it. So it'll be lovely to see, a completely fresh front 4, and knowing that Saka, Martinelli, Jesus all going to get a rest for Forest, but I'm not sure he'll do that. So I think it'll be similar to what he did in the home game. A fair bit of rotation, Matt Turner in goal, and a fair bit of rotation across the team. Lokonga, Holding possibly. Tierney probably comes in because he's obviously not playing in the league at the moment. But yeah, I can see him still playing maybe Saka or Martinelli, or possibly both. And it's just a bit of a worry, really, because I know what he said the other day after Saka played against PSV, and he said, the best players play 70 games a season, or whatever his quote was. But it's not like he got a kick on Thursday, and he was a slight doubt for today. If you remember, he got a kick on the calf and he was limping around and whatever. And it's just a little bit of a worry, because obviously he's the kind of player, both him and Marcelli, they're the kind of players that do get targeted by defenders, right? They get taken out a lot. And it's just one bad tackle away in a game that they don't really need to play, I don't think, from missing, the next few games or whatever, a number of weeks. And that's just a bit of a concern when we've got 12 points out of 12 now. I just want to see a rotated team, but I personally don't think he will. I think he'll just go for a mix.
Yeah, because I think obviously if we beat, or if we get a result against PSV, that next game, which I think is the week after, against Zurich is obviously a complete dead rubber, right? And he can completely rest everyone. And I wonder if he's thinking, well, I've got Forest at home on Sunday, and actually, I'd rather have the rest before the Chelsea game than before Forest at home. And he's like, I'm just going to push through now. Then arguably you could even rotate against Forest a bit if you need to. And then you've got a complete dead rubber on Thursday where you can literally play, I don't know, the stewards. Like maybe even you and I will get a game wise or something. And then
Raj.
Raj, yeah, Raj too. Sorry, I don't know why I said you.
Why was I excluded?
I don't know. It just, but yeah, all three of us could get a game, and then like we can just get on to Chelsea.
Yeah,
that I think is if you take a risk against PSV and then we lose, which is PSV a good team, it's possible. Then you have to play everyone on Thursday in a pressure game where we have to win.
true.
And that, or I don't know, I assume we have to win. So I think actually he'll play a fairly strong team, and I'm okay with that. I know what you said, Mike. Like, look, we could get a Saka injury and then we're completely screwed. But you know, the best teams, I don't say the best teams, the top 4 teams are playing Champions League and they're playing the league, and they're playing Salah's playing week in, week out, twice a week. All the Spurs players, all the Liverpool players, all the City players, all the Chelsea players are all doing this. And yeah, I know. I mean, the concern is obviously one injury and the drop off is so big from our first teamers to everyone else that it is a bit of a worry. But yeah. I mean, I don't want to go too like pro no rotation because sod's law will just get an injury and then you guys will be like, I told you so. But yeah, I'm not super worried. I think players can handle it, and I think we've rotated pretty like smartly so far with like not having too many first teamers in. But you're right, we're never gonna know if it had an impact today, right? And that's the thing. It did look tired. It did look sloppy. Whether or not that was due to no rest or just the fact that we've seen our players do this last season. Like last season, we'd have loads of rest, and all of a sudden, be away from home and just completely out of the blue, we'd just forget how to play. Partey would just stop playing. Odegaard would just get closed down and lose the ball. Saka and Martinelli would get nullified. And what Southampton did really well today is basically they stopped Partey from playing, and then they stopped Arsenal from playing. And that happens. It probably tiredness probably does have an effect, but it wouldn't surprise me where if we had a week and we did this, it could still happen.
Just one thing that arguably did affect today that we hadn't really talked about yet is the referee.
Oh my god, yeah, bloody hell.
Because I think, look, we've done. Listen, this is an Arsenal podcast. We spent 45 minutes, I think, actually just not talking about this, which I think kind of shows that we're very willing to just be as introspective as possible, and and not necessarily just blame the result on the referee. I genuinely have to say it was one of the most baffling referee performances that I've seen. Okay, maybe baffling is the wrong word. I thought in some ways it was sort of we've heard that apparently the Referees Association, PG Mol or whatever they are called, said at the beginning of the season that they wanted to let more stuff go, apparently, right? So that the whole thing is they wanted to make games more free flowing, and therefore what happened today, what we saw today, was probably exactly on brand with regards to that. The referee effectively just let pretty much everything go. But I think the issue is the stuff that was let go. It's completely inconsistent with how games are refereed, this season. And it allowed, I think, particularly what's the centre back that was up against Jesus for the whole game?
Coletta Carr.
Yeah, right? who looks in stature and just style so much like Socrates, I thought. Anyway, just allowed him to just completely negate a lot of Jesus's amazing qualities by just manhandling him the whole game. I mean, Aaron, What did you think? The refereeing performance overall? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. You know what it is? Is basically, if you watch the highlights, like a 2-minute highlight clip of that game, you'd be like, well, what's the big deal? Like, he didn't get any major calls wrong. They didn't, the goals were all legitimate. And if you score like 1 minute or 2-minute highlights, you think the referee had a perfectly good game. But it's all those little things that are cumulatively, well, some of them aren't even little, right? The Saka dive where he booked him for diving wasn't a yellow card. All of those times we got the ball into Jesus, and we go back to like, oh, we played badly. Yes, we played badly, but we also got the ball into him in some very good positions, and he just gets taken out. And there are all these little things that, yeah, you can argue that you're letting the game flow, you're trying to be more lenient, but I think some of them are just fouls, and he got them wrong. And there was one where it was ridiculous, but there was a couple of clips floating around on it where Saka's on the edge of the box. I don't know if you've seen this. He gets fouled. The referee plays advantage, but literally half a second later, he loses the ball.
Yeah.
And he just carries on. And he's just like, okay, well, you lost the advantage. And like, it's basic stuff like that where I think that he just had a really, really bad game. And I don't like, abusing referees or, getting personal, but I think you just have to accept that the referee had a bad game, and we probably should have had a penalty. And if if ref gives that penalty and we score, then it's a very different game. We're talking about a very different set of circumstances.
I think you're being pretty kind, Aaron. And I think when you say he had a bad, I mean, look, obviously he did have a bad game, but I think there was more than one major decision or incident in the box. Like there was obviously the Gabriel Jesus one. When you watch that back, like how that's not been reviewed and he's been sent to the monitor for that, I don't know.
Yeah, because you look what happened with McTominay yesterday, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
but this is what I think. Again, I agree with Miles. I think you're being easy on him because I don't even think it's necessarily that he had a bad game. It felt like he knew exactly what he was doing. So it wasn't like, I think sometimes when you say referees had a bad game, somebody think, okay, maybe they interpreted that decision the wrong way. If they could go over and do it again, they'd do it differently. But this felt like he took a calculated strategy throughout the game. So, particularly with the manhandling stuff, he had decided, no, like that's good. That I'm not playing for that. I'm not playing for that over and over again, right?
Go on, bro. Sorry.
No, that was it. And it really did feel like, maybe there was something unconscious there that was kind of something about being part of an occasion of a kind of, not a giant killing per se, but it felt like he wanted to be part of something that was quite interesting. And he was just allowing these, like the example you gave, Aaron, and again, like that's a very calculated thing, right? It was an obvious foul on Saka, and he's just gone play advantage. I mean, it was literally, like you say, it was like half a second. He loses the ball immediately afterwards, and he just goes, "It's done." That's a calculated thing, right?
It's either, I don't want to go down like conspiracy land of like agendas and him being deliberately out to get us wrong. It could be. We'll never know. It's just bad refereeing. Like you see that. Just stop the game and give a foul. It's almost like he makes a mistake and then he's like, I need to cover up this mistake, and I'm gonna just make another mistake to cover it up so it doesn't look like I made a mistake. Like the Saka, not calling the Saka foul that when he went down and saying, right, oh, I've given it now. I didn't give it, so I'm gonna have to book you for diving. Otherwise, it looks silly. It's that sort of stuff. But like all of that, it's just the couple on Jesus where they're literally grabbing him. Like I think you have to give it. And there was that weird one where Kieran Tierney got taken out in the box, and this guy didn't even show a replay of it, so no one ever knows what happened. I thought that
it looks like Tierney wins the header, and the defender that comes across, because the ball goes over the defender's head, the defender that comes across basically just, it's almost like as he jumps, his arm just goes into his like head or his throat, and Tierney goes down, but not looked at or anything. I mean, what I don't understand is and I know, this is obviously going to turn in, or has turned into a bit of a moaning and a bit of a rant, but so be it. With the Jesus one, okay, the referee has decided that it's not a foul, play goes on, but VAR should be like obviously looking at it, what are they? Again, it's the same thing that has been said about loads of incidents, not just Arsenal incidents, but loads of incidents this season. You know, they're looking at these and they're there to correct things, right? And they're not correcting bad decisions, or at least telling the ref, go and have a look at it on the monitor because maybe you've missed this and not seen it. You've not seen it from the right angle. And that's baffling as well. And there was another one where Ben White just gets pushed over in the box in the first half. And he Ben White probably feels a bit of contact in his back and goes down. I'm not saying it is a penalty or it isn't, but again, you know, it's not like Sky showed 3 or 4 different replays of it. Maybe there wasn't much there, but from what I read on Twitter, it sounded like it could have been, you know, there was a decision to be made there, basically. And also, why would Ben White? I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure why Ben White wouldn't feel the need to go down unless there's a decent amount of contact. Someone's actually pushing him over, and so there's quite a few. That happened today, and it's just really frustrating because, yeah, as you said, it's inconsistency, and it's just like poor. It's just the quality of refereeing is crap. It's just crap in this country, and
yeah,
we keep saying it whenever. I mean, you know, it's not just when we win or when we lose or draw, whatever, but it's just generally there's decisions that just, yeah, like you said, Raj, baffling, to be honest.
I think, you know, I genuinely think actually the big decisions, you know, the ones that, you know, is it a goal? Like, was it a foul? Largely, the refs get right in this country, right? But I think what I see a lot more this season is those marginal calls, especially with us, and is like when a player should be booked against us, they don't get booked. A player will foul one of our players 2 or 3 times, or they'll systematically take out Saka or Martinelli. Nothing will get done. It's all these little things where they're like, oh, that should be yellow card, or you should really give that a foul, even though it's nothing major, but they don't. It's those little things where I think, you know, you give a referee a directive of like, let the game flow. That in theory is good, but they just don't know how to interpret it. It's like they haven't been given enough training in terms of, they've just been given a text message saying, all right, lads, this season, let the game flow. And then that's it. And that's all. And they're just making it up as they go along in terms of what that means.
Yeah, I agree. It's incredibly frustrating. But look, when we all said and done, I think, you know, today the result has been as a result of a combination of things, and I think we've discussed all those things. I suppose it is important. It's important days like this to come away with a draw at least, right? Which we did, and it's also really helpful when you have a week, when you have a result like that, when everyone else doesn't end up capitalizing. And actually, overall, it's been quite a good game week for us in that respect, because, you know, Man City obviously did win, but Tottenham lost, Chelsea drew, Man United drew, Liverpool lost. I mean, you know, a byproduct of one of those results was Newcastle winning. But we have got ourselves in a situation where still, even after this draw, we're top of the league with 28 points. But crucially, I think, even if you just ignore Man City below us, you know, 2 points below us, it does still mean that the gap between us and Spurs in third is still 5 points, and Spurs have played an extra game. So it still looks pretty good from that respect, isn't it? And I think in that regard, Mize, is that another moment where we need to just reflect and kind of be like, we will drop points every now and again. It's not the fucking end of the world.
Yeah, it's basically what I said at the start on this game, and like contextualizing the result in the grand scheme of things in the season so far. Like, we've had an unbelievable start to this season. Like, it's almost like, because we dropped points today against a team we should be beating, it does feel really disappointing. But yeah, you just kind of remind yourself how good we've been so far this season when you look at the league table. And it's still really early. Like, I know I mentioned it in our chat, you know, we're 5 points clear of Spurs with a game in hand, albeit that game in hand is against City. It can all change really, really quickly, right? So it's probably still quite early to be talking about, I know we're going to talk about it, but, you know, to kind of start analyzing, okay, 5 points ahead of Spurs, what is it? I don't know how many points it is ahead of Liverpool, 10 points or so. And start trying to work it.
12 points.
Oh, is it 12?
Liverpool, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, look, it's a massive gap, but, you know, what we have to show ultimately is consistency, right? And we've drawn today, fine, take the point. move on. Forest at home next week is obviously, that's just a game we can't be dropping points in if we've got any kind of aspirations of finishing in the top 4 at the very least, but top 4 this season. And so we just have to move on to the next game and show that, keep trying to show that consistency that we've shown so far. That's the main thing. And if obviously now, look, we're in a position now, if we do keep showing that consistency, then we'll achieve what we need to achieve this season, because we've set ourselves up so well in the first 10 or 11 games. That's the fantastic thing. But it's not like we're not a couple of injuries away from, as we keep reminding ourselves, from as everything we've talked about, right? The squad players having to come in, and then the drop off is quite big, and then you just don't know what could happen in that scenario. And there's this just big kind of like wild card of a World Cup in the middle of the season as well, and no one knows what's going to happen come January. So yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, look, it's nice, it's fantastic. It's obviously amazing to be at the top of the league still, and we've got to enjoy that, and we should enjoy that, and we should enjoy the wins, of course. But like, I feel like Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, United, all the teams that drop points this weekend, I think they'll all come back, and I think come the end of the season, I've said it from the start, like, I think probably all of them will be there or thereabouts around that kind of fourth place, like challenging for the top 4 basically. So we just need to be in it and amongst it, and give ourselves a chance with like 10 games to go.
Did you learn anything about our rivals, Aaron, this weekend? I mean, Newcastle, for them, it's a pretty memorable win, I guess, away at Tottenham. That's probably, you probably see their most seismic result of the season. You probably argue, even though they've been doing pretty well anyway. Like they drew with United, but I think they hadn't. If I'm correct, they hadn't beaten any of the big teams yet this season. And this was going away at this kind of defensive counter-attacking masterclass that is Conte allegedly, and going in there and actually really deserving a win. Not limited to Newcastle. Have you learned anything about the rest of our rivals?
I think overall, I'd probably say we are as good, if not better, at this point in time, or at least based on the first 10 games of the season, as good, if not better, than most of them, right? And I'd say Liverpool, I don't include City in this, so Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Man United, and I would include Newcastle in this. Newcastle are the ones I really worry about, because they seem to be getting better. And under Eddie Howe, they've got a really good manager. They've got some good players. Again, a thin squad, which is probably susceptible to injuries. If they lose Bruno Guimaraes, then they might be in a bit of trouble there. Callum Wilson's injured every other game. Every team has their kryptonite of what can bring them down quite easily, right? And we're no different to that. So I think really, yeah, I don't want to go looking and counting the points between us and the others and where we are, but it is a funny season. We've just got to get to this, mini break where we've got Forest, Chelsea, Wolves, I think. And if we can get to that point in the season and be, ideally, if we're still top, that would be amazing. Even if we're second to City, because City have caught us at that point, but we're still the best of the rest. That is a phenomenal achievement at that point in the season. And then who knows what's going to happen during that winter break and that World Cup, right? Then you get back and we're on Boxing Day. Then we've got, I think, 2 games and the transfer window's open again. Yeah. And again, we don't know what players are going to come back. Haaland's not going to the World Cup. Maybe he injures himself diving off his yacht in the Middle East, something like that. And he's out for 10 games, and we're all of a sudden title favourites. I don't know, man. Like, all about Jesus and Martinelli and Saka will come back injured, and we're completely screwed. Like, anything can happen. So yeah, I think we just gotta. We're on this crazy ride, and we've just got to roll with it and see what happens week after week. I don't know, man. I don't know. We could still finish 6th. That's the part that terrifies me.
Yeah, you'd think that you'd imagine that the only personally, I feel like the only reason that would even be a possibility is if we had a scenario like you mentioned where I don't know, Martinelli and Saka, come back from the World Cup and they're injured, and I feel like otherwise it feels like we've got a decent amount of points on the board. The way in which we've accumulated that points is playing a fairly kind of sustainable type of football. You'd hope therefore that if we keep doing the things that we're doing, we'll drop points. But as long as we don't get a range of big injuries, you'd hope, fingers crossed, this is kind of good enough at the moment to get top 4. We'll see though, and I'm sure we'll spend lots of time reviewing that going forward. Just conscious, we've got we have got our PSV game coming up, but just to conclude the episodes, just quickly touch on the Forest game. I mean, you sort of, Aaron, and you sort of touched on. You sort of said that you wouldn't mind seeing some rotation, if I recall what you said. Something that you said earlier on in the episode. But can we really afford to take Forest lightly? They've just beaten Liverpool. I know Liverpool
they've started to find a bit of form now, haven't they? Which is a bit annoying. I think they kept 2 clean sheets in a row as well now, so their defense is starting to click. They've signed a lot of players, so who knows where, if they'll get all of those players to click. Sod's law will be at the Emirates when they turn up. But
I think I read something the other day that only 9 out of the 22 players that they've signed over the summer have started games for them.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that prick Jesse Lingard's going to turn up, isn't he? He's solid. He's definitely going to score. I think, look, if you look at it, PSV away or Forest at home, which is a harder game, I'd say PSV away. And actually, therefore, if you are going to rotate, I wouldn't be surprised if we rotate. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Tierney probably deserves his place back at left back. I know there's murmurs that Zinchenko might be back or in and around fitness again. I think we missed him over the last couple of games because he's a player that we probably could have brought on even if he wasn't starting. And you probably think actually he can change the game in terms of what he does. He's not going to score, but his presence could add a lot. So I think if we can get him back and get him some minutes either at PSV or at Forest or certainly against Zurich at home, that would be a real boost. And I think it depends on the team that we put out on Thursday, but I wouldn't be surprised if, actually, maybe I don't think we'll play Jesus on Thursday, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vieira gets a game. Or it's hard because there isn't. We say we want to rotate, but who do you take out and who do you bring in? Because the drop off is quite big, except for some of those defenders. Maybe there isn't actually that much to rotate with.
When you look at the Forest game on the weekend, what do you think? It's a game that we really should be winning, right?
Of course, for 100%. We need to get 3 points, and I do think we'll win. But we can't underestimate Forest. Like Aaron has said, they've started to pick up a bit of form. They seem to set up quite. I caught a bit of the game against Liverpool, and they seem to set up with a 4-3-3, so that it's not a case of them playing 5 at the back and sitting in, but they really seem to, and I think Steve Cooper said it, just basically clog up the midfield. And it'll be interesting to see how they approach an away game when they come to us, if they'll set up the same way. And I noticed it today as well in the second half and periods of towards the end of the first half as well, but mainly in the second half, where we've obviously, our central midfield has changed a lot from last season, where now Partey is like that single pivot and just sits in front of the back 4. But, we were very exposed for the goal that they scored today. And I felt like Partey was quite exposed. And you started to see Xhaka drop back into central midfield a bit when Southampton were on top. So it'll be quite interesting to see how Forest set up and whether they just try and dominate the midfield, knowing that it's essentially just Thomas Partey there. But obviously, look, we should be coming into this game with no kind of worries in terms of really how we approach the game. Home team fully expect us to start on Sunday how we've been starting most games this season. I don't think it's going to be a particularly easy game, but I do think we'll win. So if you're asking for a prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Arsenal.
Right, Aaron, what's your prediction?
I was going to go 2-0 as well. I'll go 2-1 then, just because I want to be different. 2-1 win.
Right, I'm gonna go for us to really bounce back with a big win, because I think firstly I think we're really,
8-0.
No, I was going to say big win. I was actually just going to go by 3-0, 3-0. Because I think we're a different beast at home anyway. Like, you know, I think also, you know, it's couple of games, couple of Premier League games away on the bounce. I think the players are really going to enjoy feeling the love from the home fans again. You know, I think they probably, the players probably miss us. I think it's quite, you know, Forest, when you get a win like you did against Liverpool, it's awesome for them. It totally is. But I sort of feel like you'd rather not then go away to an Arsenal kind of next. You'd rather kind of just maybe just take your foot off a little bit, and I'm not sure if it's a game that they'll enjoy playing. So I think, you know, overall, I think it's I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be 3-0 Arsenal. But okay, guys, listen, thank you so much for your time. Had fun talking about Arsenal as always, regardless of the fact that we didn't win, but we're still top of the league. And another big week ahead of us. So listen, everyone, thank you for joining and listening to our episode. Please like and subscribe and share the episode. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for the comments today. Chan, it's pretty much all you, mate. So thank you. But take care all, and have a great rest of the week. Cheers.
Cheers, bye.
Guys. See ya.
Bye.